Fighting for freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. The Patrick Riggins Show. Call in now at 865-243-8255. That's 243-TALK. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Welcome back to the Patrick Riggins Show. Playing a little Grover Washington Jr. there.
The sounds of the quiet storm.
Yes. I've not heard this song in forever. Have you, Tor?
No.
I remember when growing up, I'd hear it.
What movie was this off of in the 80s? The Mannequin or something like that, I think.
You got me. You could Google it real quick.
No, we got a show to do. Everybody just hold on. We're just going to Google it.
Yeah, well, according to that first segment, we don't have a show we're trying to do.
I'll shut up now.
I didn't say that. Oh, the sax solo.
You rant about something.
Oh, I was listening to the sax solo. Speak, Patrick. Sit up. There you go. Good boy. All right. Getting into this segment here. This segment, I've talked a few times about this, but I want to hit on it again real quickly. I want to talk with you about how important the Constitution really is and how you need to read it. You need to know what is in it and what it allows the federal government to do. This isn't taught in our public schools anymore, mainly because most of the teachers and administrators don't believe we should be abiding by it. So they propagandize the students by downplaying its importance and significance to our country. The reason we have a Constitution is because our founders knew you couldn't trust people to mind their own business. And government is made up of people. Mostly people who think they know better than you how to run your life. We don't base our government on a moral code per se, such as like a religious code. We base it on the fact that all humans are born with natural rights. Rights that our founders saw as God-given. Now, whether you believe in God or not, they still saw all humans as possessing natural rights. They screwed up the slavery situation, but unfortunately, those were the times in which they lived. That doesn't excuse their behavior. It merely points out that even the founders of our country were human. Now, moral codes and religious practices, they can change over the years. Just look how what used to be not acceptable in polite society now is. Now we have progressives, people who think they know how you should act, trying to tell us the Constitution doesn't mean what it says, that a right to keep a gun is not in the Constitution. What all these people miss is that if it isn't in the Constitution, the government has no business sticking its nose into it. The Constitution is a set of restrictions. It only lists what the government can do. If it isn't spelled out in that document, then the federal government cannot do it. Nowhere does it say the government can restrict guns or anything having to do with them. When the colonies voted to ratify the Constitution, what they were doing was allowing the government, the federal government, out of its cage on parole, so to speak. The Constitution is the set of restrictions by which the government must obey. Otherwise, it needs to be put back into jail until it can agree to abide by the rules. And by putting it back into jail, I mean doing away with it. When the federal government proves it can't be trusted, or when it proves it can be trusted, then we'll think about letting it back out. Until then, the states can get along just fine. We'll take care of things locally and put the federal government back into place when it agrees not to stick its nose into everything the citizens are doing. Now, is this a radical solution? Well, of course. But is it unwarranted? Increasingly, I think a lot of people are starting to not think so. It's interesting, though. Some people can be swayed from one side to the other. Others back their side no matter what, without even testing it to see if it makes sense. For example, I'm sure you have noticed this as well. People pass things around the internet, and if it agrees with their agenda, they'll believe it. We have all this stuff floating around talking about guns, gun control, taxes, political beliefs, and half of it isn't true. But if it agrees with what you think, you will blindly accept it and forward it on. This is the problem in America today. People are too eager to believe and back what a politician says without doing any research on whether it is really right or not, or whether the government has that power. As long as it agrees with their philosophy, then people don't care whether it is true or not. I touched on this a few weeks ago on this very show when talking about President Obama, how he has continued 99% of the policies of the Bush administration. Policies that Democrats and liberals complained about, but are now silent because it is their guy doing it. Their guy murdering people in foreign lands without trials or even appeals. Their guy signing legislation that is blatantly unconstitutional. Two recent examples, which I mentioned on the show last week, the NDAA and the FISA Act. When Bush signed these types of legislation, liberals were complaining how he was circumventing the Constitution, how he was violating people's rights. Now, nothing. Not a word. Nothing from the media, nothing from the liberals, because it's their guy doing it. Then it's okay to violate law, violate human rights. And I'm not just jumping on the Democrats for this hypocrisy. The Republicans are just as guilty. Listen to the conservative commentators and pundits on the radio and television. Now that Obama is in office, all of this constitutional or unconstitutional legislation is destroying the country. But when Bush was doing the same thing, you heard nothing. You could hear the crickets chirping. It was all about fighting terrorism, fighting Al-Qaeda. Today you can listen to those same conservatives, and with Obama doing the same thing, signing the same legislation, now the country can't survive it. The conservatives are as much to blame as the liberals. That's why this show is different, is consistently about freedom and liberty for the individual. I don't care whether someone is liberal or conservative. I don't care if they're one of the confused moderates. I don't care. All humans, or as humans, we are born with our natural rights, and those need to be respected. These conservative commentators are all now trying to jump on the bandwagon. Oh yeah, I've been against all this government intrusion the whole time. All this wasteful government spending. Really? Where were you when it was going on during Bush's term? I'll tell you where. You were right at the front of the procession proclaiming you knew what was best for everyone, as long as the government is pushing your conservative agenda. You are all for that. But when it starts pushing a liberal agenda, well, no, that's intrusive and unconstitutional. Well, forget that. I want government harassing the American citizens in the correct conservative way. Keep that in mind as you listen to these so-called limited government types who say they want limited government. That really means what they want is government pushing conservative intrusiveness instead of liberal intrusiveness. This is why you have voters voting for things they don't have a clue about. All they know is that they should do it because their person is for it. Or they've been told by others that this is how they should vote. Nothing more. People are constantly looking for this external validation to what they believe, and you shouldn't be doing that. Think about your principles and stand firm on them. The Constitution should be the bedrock of those principles. We supposedly live in a constitutional republic, so we shouldn't be doing anything outside of what is allowed in that document, that set of rules by which the government must play. That's why I don't have guests on this show. People say I should have guests come on, talk about this or that issue. Why? Is it allowed in the Constitution? No. Then we shouldn't be doing it. I don't need external validation. I don't need someone telling me that. I can read it for myself. If someone is trying to contort the Constitution to allow something, then that is a good clue that it doesn't, and they're just trying to work around it. I don't need someone else coming in here saying the same thing I'm saying. What good would that be? I don't need someone to tell me I'm right, or tell me if they're saying the same thing I'm saying, then who cares? You can just hear me say it. If you want strong, logical, reasoned analysis of issues from a libertarian, and more to the point, an American point of view, then tune me in and listen to this show, because you don't usually get this type of consistent analysis of the issues anywhere else. Now, our Constitution has a way to adjust to modern times. It's called the amendment process. If the government wants to do something other than what the Constitution allows, then it should try and amend it, not find ways to end run around it or Congress. For example, these executive orders from the president, if they carry the force of law, then they're unconstitutional. The president cannot make law. That is the job of Congress. Nowhere in the Constitution is the granting of power to the president to make executive orders of any kind. It's nowhere in there. And if it isn't in there, then he doesn't have that power. Don't listen to all these experts tell you, well, if you read and interpret the Constitution this or that way, then you see it. As I said, if you're having to contort and pull meanings and read stuff into this document that's not spelled out, then you're being deceitful. If it's so necessary for the president to have this power to issue executive orders, if it's such a wonderful and great idea, then let's amend the Constitution to allow it, specifically allow it, so there is no question. Why don't they do that? Because they know the people of this country would never grant one person that much authority. The authority to issue decrees and dictates, much like the king did, who we fought against to gain our independence. So if they cannot get the amendment passed, then they try then to end-run the Constitution and the American people, and do it anyway. And Congress doesn't want to stop the president because they want that power if their party gets into the presidency. That's why I say you're getting screwed by both parties. Both of them are power hungry and lust after these inherent benefits of federal office. All right, we're up on the last break of the Patrick Riggins Show. We've covered a lot, and we've got a little bit more to go. When we come back, we'll be talking about, how you can get in trouble having a Hello Kitty toy gun at school. We'll talk about that when we come back.